After the death of Charlemagne in 814, the unity of his vast Carolingian empire, stretching from the Pyrenees to the Elbe and from the North Sea to central Italy, began to unravel. His vision of a restored Western Roman Empire under Christian leadership had depended on his personal authority and military power. Once he was gone, the administrative and cultural cohesion he had built started to fracture. His weaker successors divided the realm through the Treaty of Verdun in 843, splitting it into three loosely connected kingdoms: West Francia, the foundation of modern France; Middle Francia, encompassing Lotharingia, northern Italy, and parts of Burgundy; and East Francia, the precursor to the German kingdom. This division eroded imperial unity and intensified regional rivalries, as counts, dukes, and bishops asserted growing independence. By the early 900s, the Carolingian dynasty in East Francia had become weak and fragmented. Kings were figureheads, their authority confined to narrow domains. Noble families such as the Ludolfings, Conradines, and Babenbergs ruled their lands autonomously and often fought among themselves. Meanwhile, the realm was besieged by foreign invasions: Magyars from the east, Vikings from the north, and Slavs along the frontiers. Local lords raised private armies and built fortresses for protection, symbolizing the decline of royal power. The dream of a united Christian empire seemed little more than a fading memory of Charlemagne's golden age. Out of this turmoil rose Otto the Great, a ruler of strength and vision. Building on the foundation laid by his father, Henry the Fowler, Otto restored royal authority and forged unity among the German duchies. Through conquest and diplomacy, he brought together Germany, northern and central Italy, Bohemia, and parts of Burgundy. In 962, he was crowned Holy Roman Emperor by the Pope in Rome, reviving the imperial ideal that had vanished since Charlemagne. This marked the birth of the Holy Roman Empire, a realm that sought to unite secular might and spiritual authority, the crown and the cross. It became a uniquely medieval experiment in power, an empire of princes and bishops, kings and emperors, bound not by centralized administration but by a shared belief in divine order. Medieval chroniclers often portrayed Otto's rule in biblical and providential terms. To them, the empire was not merely a political creation but an instrument of divine will, maintaining peace, faith, and justice across Christendom. Monks, bishops, and theologians described Otto's reign as a new age of Christian renewal, a restoration of order and piety after generations of chaos. In the writings of churchmen, Otto's empire embodied a mystical union between the temporal and the spiritual realms. The emperor governed the world as the pope governed souls; together, they reflected divine harmony. The empire was holy not merely by title but by purpose. It existed to defend the faith, uphold justice, and protect Christendom from both internal disorder and external threats. To ordinary chroniclers, especially in Germany, Otto's reign meant stability after an age of anarchy. For many, the empire became not an abstract idea but a living symbol of God's protection, a Christian order shielding Europe from the darkness of the past. For nearly a millennium, from 962 to 1806, the Holy Roman Empire endured. Its power rose and fell, its borders shifted, yet its influence remained. It shaped the political, cultural, and spiritual landscape of medieval Europe. Its legacy was not that of a single centralized power, but of a delicate balance between monarchy, faith, and autonomy, a balance that defined the very nature of European governance for centuries to come. But how, exactly, was this empire established? What political maneuvers, religious alliances, and ideological claims allowed Otto to transform a fractured kingdom into an empire that would stand the test of centuries? In 936 CE, at Aachen, Charlemagne's ancient capital, the young Otto, barely in his 20s, was crowned king of East Francia. The ceremony was steeped in symbolism. Every gesture, every hymn, and every relic evoked the memory of Charlemagne, the long-dead emperor whose legacy still shaped Europe's imagination. It was not merely a coronation but a declaration of intent. Otto sought to restore the imperial majesty that had long faded since the Carolingian age and to reshape the fragmented German realm into a united Christian kingdom. Yet beneath the solemn hymns of devotion, resentment brewed. Otto's ascension disrupted the delicate balance of power among the great dukes, who had expected to rule beside him. His half-brother Thankmar felt cheated of inheritance, while his full brother Henry of Bavaria believed the crown rightfully his. Around them, nobles whispered that the new king was too proud, too Saxon, too much a soldier to be a saintly ruler. Even as Otto stood crowned, his authority was already being tested from within. The tension soon erupted. In 938, Thankmar, aligning himself with discontented nobles, raised the banner of revolt, claiming Otto had usurped his birthright. The rebellion ended swiftly but brutally. Thankmar was cornered and killed while seeking sanctuary in a church, cut down before the altar. The act sent shockwaves through Christendom. Though Otto did not strike the blow himself, the blood on holy ground stained his reign. To some, he was a tyrant who violated sacred law; to others, a king strong enough to enforce divine order even within the house of God. From that moment on, fear and reverence became inseparable companions to his name. But the fall of one brother did not bring peace. From 939 to 941, Henry of Bavaria gathered Franconian and Saxon nobles in rebellion, hoping to claim the throne his father had once dreamed of. Otto, hardened by betrayal, met his brother with calculated force. The rebellion ended with Henry's capture, and the scars of mistrust between the king and his family ran deep. When Henry was taken prisoner, Otto spared his life, a gesture that revealed both royal magnanimity and fatal leniency, for Henry raised the banner of rebellion once more not long after. Determined to secure his throne against the treachery of blood and nobility alike, Otto turned toward the one power that could not inherit, the Church. He began appointing bishops and abbots to key positions, granting them lands and privileges once held by rebellious lords. To the aristocracy, this was an outrage, the proud warrior class replaced by men of prayer. To Otto, it was strategy. The clergy could not build dynasties to challenge him, and their loyalty, bound by faith, gave his rule a divine legitimacy that swords alone could not. By the early 940s, Otto had transformed his realm into a crucible of faith and ambition. Rebellion had forged his strength, scandal had tested his resolve, and sacred defiance had defined his kingship. He ruled a kingdom trembling between devotion and fear, one where the cross and the crown stood side by side, each holding the other in fragile balance. While Otto labored to stabilize his turbulent realm in Germany, tragedy unfolded beyond the Alps. In 947 CE, the Lombard kingdom of Italy was shaken by the sudden death of King Lothair II of Italy, husband of the young and beautiful Queen Adelaide. Rumors whispered that he had been poisoned by his rival and successor, Berengar II of Bavaria. Adelaide soon became the target of Berengar's ambition. Determined to legitimize his claim to the Italian throne, he demanded that she marry his son, Adalbert of Bavaria. When she refused, Berengar ordered her imprisoned in a fortress on Lake Garda, shorn of her hair and stripped of her freedom. For months, Adelaide languished in captivity, sustained only by her faith. Yet with the aid of a loyal priest and a sympathetic guard, she escaped through a secret tunnel, disguised herself, and fled across the lake under cover of night. She found refuge with Bishop Adelhard of Reggio, who, recognizing the wider implications of her plight, sent word north, to the one ruler powerful enough to intervene, King Otto of Germany. When Otto learned of Adelaide's suffering, he recognized more than a romantic tale of a captive queen. He saw a divine opportunity. Italy had long been unstable. A union with its rightful queen would not only rescue an innocent woman but also grant Otto moral legitimacy and dynastic claim to the Italian crown. Thus, in 951 CE, Otto led his army across the Alps under the pretext of protecting Adelaide. In truth, his purpose was far grander, to bring Italy under his control and extend his dominion beyond the German frontier. Their meeting would soon pass into legend. The exiled queen, dignified even in adversity, and the German king, resolute and calculating, encountering one another as if ordained by Providence. That same year, they married, an act that sealed both a political alliance and the dawn of an imperial destiny. Yet, while their union united kingdoms, it divided Otto's own court. The marriage sparked scandal and resentment among the German princes, and within the royal family itself. Otto's eldest son, Liudolf of Swabia, once celebrated as the shining heir to his father's legacy, now found himself eclipsed. What began as a proud and hopeful partnership between father and son soon eroded into jealousy and mistrust. Otto's attention shifted southward, to Italy and to Adelaide, leaving Liudolf to interpret his father's ambition as betrayal. By 953 CE, that resentment boiled over. Liudolf, joined by discontented dukes and bishops, accused Otto of abandoning the German heartlands for foreign conquest and of allowing Adelaide's influence to cloud his judgment. The rebellion spread quickly, plunging the empire into the chaos of near civil war. But Otto met rebellion with decisive force. His armies crushed Liudolf's revolt, imprisoning his own son and confiscating the lands of rebellious nobles. The victory was absolute but bitter. It cost Otto the loyalty of many nobles, the trust of his family, and the innocence of his kingship. Between 956 and 960 CE, after his decisive triumph at Lechfeld and the destruction of the Magyar invaders, Otto stood at the height of glory. Hailed across Europe as the father of the fatherland and protector of Christendom, he had secured his borders, restored stability, and earned a reputation as God's chosen defender of the faith. Yet Otto's ambition reached beyond the Rhine and the Elbe. His gaze now turned southward, toward Italy, a land consumed by chaos. The Lombard king Berengar II of Ivrea had seized control of the north and pressed upon papal territories, while Rome itself had descended into corruption and intrigue. Noble families treated the papacy as an inheritance to be bought, traded, or stolen, and the throne of St. Peter had become a prize won through bribery and bloodshed. At the center of this moral collapse sat Pope John XII, a youth barely in his 20s, brilliant, reckless, and notorious. Chroniclers accused him of gambling, adultery, and even invoking pagan gods in mockery of the faith he was meant to defend. Yet when Berengar's armies threatened Rome, this scandalous pontiff turned in desperation to the one man whose power might save him, Otto of Germany. In exchange for protection, the Pope offered Otto the greatest prize of all, imperial coronation. It was an alliance born not of trust but of convenience. The Pope sought safety, and the king sought legitimacy. Each saw in the other a means to fulfill ambition. By 961 CE, Otto once again crossed the Alps, his army gleaming beneath winter light, marching with the confidence of divine purpose. Riding beside him was Queen Adelaide, once a captive queen, now empress and the embodiment of moral authority and divine sanction. Berengar's forces crumbled before him, and northern Italy fell swiftly under German control. When Otto entered Rome, the people greeted him as their deliverer. The bells of St. Peter's rang through the eternal city, incense filled the air, and the streets shimmered with the expectation of rebirth. Preparations began for a ceremony that would bind crown and cross together once more. Within the city walls, however, Pope John XII faced his own private reckoning. Behind his youthful smile lay both calculation and dread. He saw in Otto the savior of Rome, but also a master whose authority could eclipse his own. On 2nd of February 962, in the Sacred Heart of St. Peter's Basilica, Otto knelt before the altar. Surrounded by incense and the solemn chant of the clergy, John XII placed upon his head the golden crown of Imperator Romanorum Augustus, Emperor of the Romans. In that moment, the Western Roman Empire was reborn. Otto stood as the heir of Charlemagne and Augustus, ruler not merely of Germany or Italy, but of a renewed Christendom, where faith and empire were once again entwined. Yet glory quickly gave way to disillusion. The same pope who had crowned Otto soon grew restless beneath the shadow of imperial power. Realizing that he had created a master he could not command, John XII conspired with Berengar and Byzantine envoys, plotting to drive the emperor from Italy. When word of this betrayal reached Otto, his response was swift and relentless. He marched on Rome, seized the city, and convened a council of bishops and nobles to judge the Pope himself, an act without precedent in the history of Christendom. Before the assembled council, Otto accused John XII of treason, adultery, and sacrilege, crimes both moral and political. The terrified pontiff fled Rome under cover of night, abandoning the papal throne and his dignity alike. Otto, unshaken, declared him deposed and installed Leo VIII as the new pope. In doing so, Otto redefined the structure of Christendom. The emperor was no longer the papacy's servant but its protector, and, when necessary, its judge. For a time, this balance held. The popes of the later 10th century largely served at the emperor's will, and Rome became a loyal, if uneasy, partner to the German crown. By the time of his death in 973 CE, Otto I had forged a vast and formidable empire stretching from the North Sea to southern Italy, earning the title the Great. Under his rule, the German kingdom became the heart of a revived Holy Roman Empire, and his alliance with the Church laid the foundations of European governance for centuries to come. Yet Otto's legacy was a double-edged one. He had united lands long torn by war, reformed the Church, and rekindled the ancient dream of empire, but the very strength of his vision carried within it the seeds of future discord. By binding the Church to the crown, Otto created an empire that gleamed with divine authority, yet its holiness came at a cost. The clergy's deep entanglement in imperial politics bred corruption, and future emperors would find themselves locked in bitter struggles with the papacy over who truly ruled in God's name. His claim to universal dominion, an empire meant to embrace all Christendom, soon collided with the growing self-awareness of emerging nations. As France, Italy, and Poland developed their own political identities, the unity Otto had envisioned began to fracture along lines of culture, language, and ambition. Even within his own dynasty, the burden of his achievement proved too heavy to bear. His successors, Otto II and Otto III, inherited his imperial dream but not his discipline or pragmatism. Their attempts to recreate his universal Christian empire brought unrest and disillusionment, and the brilliance of Otto I's age slowly faded into memory. In the end, Otto had built an empire radiant with both faith and power, but in that brilliance lay the shadows that would haunt Europe for centuries. The Holy Roman Empire that emerged under his hand was, at its core, a paradox, a Christian empire that sought to mirror heaven, yet could never escape the imperfections of earth.